There was just something about Friday that likes to get people to know when the weekend is almost here. Maybe it was due to the fact that your boss seemed to be more relaxed on this day than any other day. Or perhaps it was the traffic that was much lighter than normal this morning. Or if you're the Loud family, you'd be in the middle of a group discussion about whatever your plans you have this weekend. The current mood of the family was much different than last week. The girls were in better spirits, chatting it up to themselves about what they could do for the next 2 days. Lisa and Lucy passed ideas on how they can approach Lincoln. Luna had a gig she was desperate to do after having some newfound energy. Luann had another birthday party to attend. Lenny wanted to visit the mall. Lana planning to go find another exotic reptile in the woods. And Lola, surprisingly, was going to take it easy and chill. The parents had already had left for work, but not before informing their daughters that Lincoln had agreed to go with them to Dairyland tomorrow. Everyone was rather happy to hear a bit of the news. Even Lynn managed to smile a little weak. Keeping their promise, and because the sisters would likely drag her out of bed, the 13-year-old joined the family for breakfast for the first time in 5 days. Everyone made certain that the Jacques was going to got her fill before they attended to their school for 6.5 hours. With Lori, she was happy to see her sisters in a cheerful mood, probably first of them since Lincoln's absence. The oldest teen gave a side glance at the empty seat where her brother used to sit, before redirecting her attention back towards chatting her siblings. The high school senior may be happy, but she also felt a little jealous. 8 days have gone by and she has yet to make any process of what she could do for Lincoln. Over half of the sisters had already managed to make amends or had plans on doing so, and if she didn't step up her game, she'd be the last one to get off Lincoln's hate list. Getting to him something a savvy themed sounded nice and all, but it'd be cheap compared to what her sisters had done so far. She hadn't even talked to him since he ran away, to which what her parents had to dealt with since the last night, well, Rita at least. She could also add Lynn to the mix, but it was well known that the 13-year-old was still nervous about being near her brother. Looking back at the sporty girl, her gaze managed to catch Lynn's as the 13-year-old ate her cereal. The Jacques was still a little upset about being drugged the previous night, but gave an otherwise chill look before focusing back on her breakfast. Lori took the bite of her French toast, the familiar feeling of frustration swelling in her stomach from how hard she thought she had worked for something for Lincoln, only to second guess half herself at the end, was dealing with her own sister practically starving herself and helping the other sisters with their ideas for Lincoln. It left Lori a little time to focus on anything else, guess herself at the end. She could say it out loud, but occasionally she felt like a second caretaker of her younger siblings. The parents wouldn't be much of help at times due to their busy work schedules, so Lori would have to make sure the rest got their stuff in order before she could do her own thing. It was a role that she had given ever since Lenny came into her life. Standing up, the teen grabbed her plate to dump it into the kitchen sink, her phone shifting in her pocket in every step. Instinctively, she softly grasped it only to pull it away. Ever since Lincoln began to staying at the Santiagos, Bobby rarely texted her. Lori would be so lucky if he sent her a message asking if she needed any help. Putting her plate back in the sink, Lori gave a slight pause as she cleaned up the plate of any food particles. Since she was on that subject, when was the last time she actually talked to Lincoln about anything? As in lengthy chats wasn't even that sort and to the point, or not about negotiating something. It must have been ages ago. Since her brain was drawing blank, she fished her phone out of her pocket and scrolled through the contacts and find Lincoln's number. Lori gave out a small frown. Remember when she told her brother what she didn't have time for useless messages from him. At this point, she would give anything in the world for Lincoln to call her at least once. Piercing her lips, Lori selected his number and pressed the call button. Oh, please don't act like you don't give a crap. Only thing you care about is texting your so precious boyfriend. You might as well be married to that phone considering how often you type on it. Those words ring throughout Lori's head as the dial tone buzzed. Realizing what she was doing, the teen hung up. Whatever the two would discuss may not be a long talk to about the phone. Plus, Lori had feared that she'd be proving that Lincoln was right, and it may seem like she was trying to shy away from the direct meetup. I'm gonna have to do a literal face-to-face on this one. I just hope a little bro is willing to listen. Lori sighed and awkwardly. Carol walked through the halls of Royal Woods High School, a sense of calm radiating her off. Fridays were typically the men's start of the weekend sales at the mall, and she had gotten her latest paycheck from her part-time job. The blonde clearly had plans for the next few days. Not even the chaotic atmosphere of her school could bring her down today. In fact, her week was pretty great all around. Aside from Connor accidentally dyeing his hair platinum, Carol's main source of frustration resided with Lori. The 17-year-old never sought of the loud sister, as Lori would hop onto the chance to rub something in her face whenever she was around. However, that was pretty a normal occurrence, had been absent the last 8 days. Carol would see Lori at lunch, in class, or in the halls, but the loud never made any moves or anything towards her. All Pringy could do was see the depressed face and troubled stature. She had appeared Lori's friends didn't know how to help her either. Not with even much they thought about it. Lori could be having a boyfriend and problems, and a small frown formed on Carol's face. Lori, however, seemed tended to boast about how great Bobby was compared to her own boyfriend. But something Carol would be very defensive about. Sure, Adam may have not had a part-time job at the moment, or do whatever Bobby says, but it wasn't like it could do matter to her. Carol blinked a few times, feeling something resting on her eyelashes. Instinctively, she pulled the foraging object, which turned out to be a couple of loose eyelashes. Dang it, now I have to realign them. Making a beeline from the nearest ladies' room, the blonde propped herself in front of the mirror and set to work. As she was resetting her eyelashes, the distant sound of a fart cut through the otherwise silent bathroom. Using the mirror, Carol looked past the reflection to see a pair of feet covered by khaki shorts under the stall door. Another fart originated from the stall, as the girl behind it gave a small sigh before the toilet was flushed. After doing her business, Lori stepped out of the stall, only to see the last person she wanted to deal with today. Neither blonde said anything for a moment, Lori's cheeks becoming red as she soon realized Carol may have heard her toots. Her face quickly grew into a scowl once she covered her embarrassment. You didn't hear anything, right? Lori, Carol started, but faced Turner. Right? The loud balled her fists, making Carol back up in the sink in fear. However, this lasted for a good second as Carol began to let her frustration grow. She wasn't about to let Lori push her around when even she did anything to offend her. What the heck is your problem? All I could do is say hi to you or like that, and you make it seem like I somehow offended you? I didn't even do anything. Oh, you weren't planning to tell your friends on Facebook about the times I actually farted when I said it was my shoes. Carol raised an eyebrow. What? Why would I even do that? Lori then folded her arms. Obviously because you're trying to make a statement that you're better than me at literally everything. She started counting her fingers. Prom queen, Bluebell Scouts, cooking class, golfing? Carol put an open hand in front of Lori's face to silence her. Hold the phone. You think I'm better than you? Just because I won a few things and you didn't? Lori fumed silently for a moment. Then, well, why wouldn't you be? Aside from what I said, you're practically better looking, have better grades, and you probably have a nice family too. A nice, Lori paused for a moment, but boyfriend who still loves you and... Her voice was beginning to break, as a few angry tears started to leak out. A brother who doesn't think you're the worst sister ever. The loud girl gave shaky breaths, putting a hand to her mouth to muffle the cries she gave. Her mascara began to run down from her eyes as her tears ruined them. Lori hadn't cried yet once since this whole affair began. She felt that she needed to be strong for her siblings' sake, and Lynn, who was doing most of the crying, once the realization fully hit her. Yet those walls she built up had worn down each time she was reminded of the strained relationship she had with Lincoln. Even before this whole luck incident started, The fact that Bobby knew about it and practically friend-zoned her tore the bridge down hard. It was only a matter of time before she finally let the waterworks loose. Part of Lori was waiting for her arrival to make a contesting comment about her plight. If so as much as snide remark left Carol's lips, Lori would surely wire the teen's mouth shut. She really needed a reason to clean her clock. Instead, she got entirely a different response. Lori, are you having problems at home? Carol's voice was sincere and concerning, prompting to Lori a nod. I'm very sorry to hear that. I mean, I couldn't imagine how I'd feel if Connor hated me, but if I thought you might have had some boyfriend troubles, since I haven't seen you with Bobby lately, and it's both, Lori clarified. Oh, today I was gonna go find Lincoln and talk with them for the first time in a week. I'm still a little nervous about doing it. Carol then tapped her chin. Lincoln. Wait, isn't he the white-haired boy that invited me to your house for a picture that one time? Her questioning gaze lowered that of a frown. And you slammed the door in my face? Lori pursed her lips. Yeah, it was him. Right. Carol then shifted in her stance a bit. So why are you nervous about talking to Lincoln? The loud girl wiped her eyes clean, nodding the back of her marks with her fingers. Let's just say me and Link have rather tedious relationship. How did that happen? I thought all of your siblings looked up to you. While my sister is an emo for whatever reason, and my brother can be very annoying at times. Carol then folded her arms. Still, I don't know why you thought I was better than you. You may have had 11 siblings. You took the varsity golf team when we were freshmen, and it took me a year to get used to that. You still have way more friends than I do, and don't get me started on your hair. Carol then looks at her reflection. I went through 6 cans of dry shampoo, and it's still onto that. You may have way more friends than I do, and don't even get me started about your hair, Carol stated. But of course it's still stuck in this curly bend. She then slumped to her shoulders. My brother used the last bit of my shampoo and turned his hair white like an idiot. Lori sulked to her shoulders as they glued to the tile floor in guilt. Not only she was dealing with a bad relationship with 2 fronts, but now she realized she had done nothing but bully someone who didn't deserve that at all. All because the loud girl's own pitziness. I'm so sorry, Carol. Carol looked back at the blonde. Huh? I'm sorry for acting like a total bitch to you for all these years. Carol winced a little at Lori's language. Well, I wouldn't say you were a... Don't try to sugarcoat it. You know it's true. I've done was antagonize you and boast about how great I was. Just try and one up for a stupid reason. Lori started to grit her teeth. You know, because last time we had a good conversation, that was way back when we were in Bluebells. Hot tears began to pour from her eyes. I even ended our relationship just because you got more badges than I did. The loud girl walked up to the sink, staring at the sad form that was in reflection. What if my brother doesn't want to speak to me for years? Everyone knows I know he's gonna hate me forever. Carol then put a hand on Lori's shoulder. I don't hate you. Sure, you may have been boastful and a jerk, and saying mean things to me behind my back, probably making crazy accusations about me and your friends. The blonde then noted Lori's face forming a deeper frown. Besides that, I couldn't really hate you, even if I tried to, Lori. I mean, unless you did something to my siblings or a parent, then I would, and I doubt I would literally be that angry with you. I just don't get it, though. Just how? Lori then looked at Carol in the eyes. How can I be so forgiving to someone who's done nothing but give grief for the past 10 years? The Pringy just gave a shrug. I guess I don't really have a meat in my body. I get annoyed, sure, but I never hit someone. I've never even been to a fight, to be honest, since I think they're just pointless. Plus, between you and me, Carol then looked back at the bathroom for a moment, hoping it wouldn't open for a second. I don't actually know how to fight, she whispered, considering that Lincoln had called the police and was slowly forgiving the family. Lori didn't even know how to respond to that. But back to the other topic, does your brother still love you? I guess. Then I'm sure he'll probably listen to you. Lincoln seems like a nice boy, so I doubt he's staying mad at you for so long. If he's like Connor, he probably just wants you to prove something to him. The last thing I heard from him was he wanted me to prove that I love him. But the thing is, I don't know how to express that. My other sisters already have ideas, while I have his lich. Well, what stuff does he like? Typical boy stuff, video games, a savvy, muscle fish, the usual. My sisters already took some ideas from that pile, though. Carol hummed and thought. Well, I got plans to head to the mall after school. Why don't we check it out and see what we could find? Lori wasn't optimistic at the idea. Seeing her prior visit to the location with Bobby didn't bear any fruit. But it wasn't like she had any better ideas. Alright, I guess, but first, I have to talk with my brother after school. That'll work. Carol then dug into her purse. Now let's fix up your face. No offense, Lori, but staring at that ruined mascara is hurting my eyes. Lori then glanced back at the mirror before giving a shrill cry. Grabbing a handful of paper towels, the girls then set to work. Ready to shred some air today, Lamo? Ronald gently slugged her boyfriend in the shoulder. Lincoln winced slightly, readjusting his backpack. I guess. Just nervous, that's all. Don't worry about that. The Hispanic girl put her arm around his shoulder. You got the best trainer around. Plus my mom could patch your face up quickly, if landed on it. She then pointed the finger at his teeth. I highly advise that you don't, though. Gee, does that make me so much better? Came back from the white-haired boy's sarcastic remark. Does not have to do anything with homework. Plus, you're going to Dairyland tomorrow. Lincoln shifted his eyes to side. Somewhat. Friday was school wasn't hardly an issue on Fridays, and then for Lincoln, the day went by pretty quickly, being plagued with thoughts about impending doom on his skateboard and the upcoming trip to Dairyland with his parents. Talking with his mother had eased the nervousness, and his stomach had to disagree. But Lincoln hadn't talked to his father at all. The last major thing he remembered was how his dad didn't seem to care about how Giant Reptile nearly made a snack out of him. This in turn led to Lincoln remembering how he was asked to step away from the house. He couldn't help but form a glare at the memory. There was definitely a lot Lincoln and Lynn Sr. would need to discuss in those matters, especially if Lynn wanted to recognize B as a father again. Seeing that Lincoln had delved into his thoughts, Ronnie Ann decided to cut him off. So you're still taking me to Jillian's at some point? Lincoln blinked as he regained his awareness, a small blush crossing his face. Yeah, when would you like to go? You're the one taking me on this date, Lincoln, so you gotta plan it. Can't exactly call yourself a man if you don't make religions. I mean, I would if I could, but you're supposed to be the one making plans here. Lincoln deadpanned for a bit at the side-eyed remark, that masculinely, but he knew Ronaldo was joking around. However, he didn't know the first thing about dating. He doubted Ronnie Ann knew, but for the first time in a while, the white-haired child knew he would have to think of something to actually really impress her. He could probably ask some of his sisters for advice, but given their history of being experts, Dad wouldn't go over too well. Unless... Hey, Link, I'm not even sure if it's just me, but it does look like there are two Loris. Ronnie Ann pointed towards a teenage girl waiting at the corner of the street. Sure enough, it was the eldest Loud sibling, along with another blonde-haired girl who was leaning against a silver 2014 Chevy Cruze. Lori then looked as if she was expecting someone, while the other girl was on her phone. Lincoln squinted his eyes a bit to try to figure out who the other girl was. Her style of clothing looked very familiar. The way her hair was curled near to waist stood out like a sore thumb. Her likeness to Lori was so close that might one assume they were sisters. In confusion overtook Lincoln, one person came to mind. That's not another Lori. That's Carol Prindry. Who? She's been Lori's rival since they were kids. But what are they doing now? The blondes must have heard Lincoln shout, seeing as they glanced in his direction. Lori gave a small smile and waved them over. The 11-year-old were hesitant at first. Lincoln was wondering if this was some kind of trick, especially since the teens were next to a car. Ronnie Ann couldn't help but feel a slight irritation burning in her chest. It might have been because, due to the fact that Roberto was somewhat dating, she silently termed Lori as a bitch in a sheep's clothing, or she was still upset with most of the girls with the past treatment of Lincoln. Didn't matter much though, because she would take both girls necessary, even though they were much taller and stronger. Once the two got within earshot, Lori finally piped up. Hey Lincoln, how was your day? Something seemed a little off about her voice. It almost sounded too sweet. Lincoln shrugged. Good, I guess. Didn't really notice because I've been distracted. He paused. What about you? Well, it could have been better, the teen replied uneasily. Right. Lincoln folded his arms. So what is the real reason why you're doing out here? He glanced towards the ever blonde. With Carol no less. I thought you hated her. That's a long story, and I came out here because I wanted to talk. About what? Lori gave a small frown, shifting her gaze to the ground. Everything. At that point, Ronnie Ann decided to join Carol off to the side. She leaned on the car and she watched the blonde at the corner of her eye, who occasionally looked up from her phone to watch the louds. The Hispanic girl studied the car, admiring for what she was seeing. For a 4-year-old car, it was still in pristine condition. So, this car's yours? Carol snorted. I wish. It's my mom's. I actually want an Acura when I get my own car. What about you? Ronnie Ann gave a shrug. I don't know much about cars, besides how good they look. That's fine, Carol paused. So you are Lincoln's girlfriend, or just a girlfriend? Ronnie Ann sputtered out, unsure of how to answer that. Wizard, Ronnie Ann, and Carol were talking. Lincoln, let me ask you this. What do you think of me as a sister, from the first time you were born all the way up to now? Don't be afraid to insult me. I just want you to be honest. Lincoln then pierced his lips, wrapping his fingers against his shoulder as he stared up into the clear blue sky. In all honesty, there was so much he could say about Lori that 1 or 2 words wouldn't be enough to describe her. So, she brought him a mixed bag of polar opposite emotions. Lori could make him feel happy for one moment, then feel sad the next, feel on top of the world and at the bottom of the barrel, feel free to feel like anything was a problem, but of course of troubles. Lincoln looked at the ground and continued from his response. He thought about the times Lori did something nice for him, but the kindness out of her heart, and it was not that she needed a favor from him. He also thought about the times that her words were alone made him feel like he meant a little to her. It wasn't the first time he had thought about it either, having spent a good amount of time away from the antics of his family. Certain memories crossed his mind at first, and he paid a little attention to. These memories were incidents that were his sisters were berate him for a bit of harsher than intended, and at the time, Lincoln had struggled off for insult, but one alone had given him the opportunity to revisit those negative moments. There's a lot I could say about you, Lori. You could be a pretty nice sister, those away from us when we needed it. But then there was times you really came across as a very selfish, to the point sometimes I think you take pleasure in using us as slaves, not counting recently. I've seen you some sort of were the middle ground to speak. Middle ground? Lori asked. Basically, you make me feel like I'm on top of my own game and dead last. But at the same time, though, if I had to be honest, it's been more of a second part lately. Lincoln had placed his hands in his pockets. Whenever he'd make fun of me, I would just ignore it like it was nothing. But after having a bad time thinking things over, I couldn't help but feel like I hardly mean anything to you. Lori then rubbed her arm, knowing where this was going. Remember the time the toilet had been clogged, and you said the princess pony was worse than mine? The teen nodded. I didn't care that much about the insults back then, but now it hurts. Lincoln then curled his hands into fists. It hurts knowing that you actually think that way about me. I don't even know how I'm supposed to handle one of my sisters that thinks the book is worse than her own brother. Doesn't help out of the insults about me for weeks, but you finally decided to stop. Even more so, I was even trying to think of a new anniversary present for our parents. You said that it was hard to make fun when I was just only panicking. I was practically devastated as I was, knowing Mom and Dad just throw my gifts up the attic like to be forgotten, while you guys had your presents out in the open somewhere. The boy shifted his gaze towards his sister. Does it make you any happy letting me feel like I can't be like you or our sisters? Lori couldn't say anything for a moment. Well, no, And then there was a time you sabotaged Lenny's driving exam after me and the others spent long hours, what seemed to be impossible. Sure, you regretted it and taught her how to drive it afterwards, but the fact you felt so jealous and you needed to do it in the first place is just. Lincoln bit his lower lip. I can't even find the right words for it. A glare started to form on the boy's face, and then there are numerous times you kicked me out of your room, even when I accidentally walked there. I don't see you doing it to any of our sisters, and it's Lenny's room too, so sometimes I keep wondering to myself why you act like you're the only one living here. And the funny thing is, he tapped his foot as a means to vent out his growing frustration. You and everyone else feel like you need to barge in my room whenever you feel like it. And it's like you girls trying to make a statement that, as the only brother, I can't have my own privacy. But I can let you girls have it, or else I'll get turned into a human pretzel. Ronnie Ann wasn't too surprised at this. The skull on her face was quite evident. Carol was expecting the exact opposite. Lori hung her head in shame, not forming any sort of response as she felt Lincoln wasn't done with his rent. Well, of course, many times my own sisters would make fun of me, and whenever it's be for my gender or lack of accomplishment, it takes a lot to get me really mad. What if it happened that Tuesday and I proved anything? Not counting the past week, I've hardly, if at all, insulted my own sisters with bad words. Part of it is because I think all you girls would gang up on me and make me apologize, even if I wasn't the one who started. Another is because, Lincoln sighed, I'm just not kind of the person. I usually don't mind the insults, but I guess I could say that over time, they finally got under my skin. But the worst part was knowing my favorite sister had a hand on it. Lori grew a little confused. Wait, I never heard about Luna bad-mouthing you. She's usually very chill until she gets some of one of her crazy musics. Lincoln shook his head. I'm not talking about Luna. He then rubbed his arm in a sheepish manner, directed his focus back to Lori. I'm talking about the sister standing in front of me. The shocked look on Lori's face spoke volumes. I'm his favorite? The single sentence ran through her continuously. But Mom and Dad, and you literally wrote that letter. She then sputtered out. Yeah, Mom and Dad made Luna look up to me the most when we were younger. But I think that's only because she could put me to sleep, and if I started crying. Lincoln then scratched the area where his turkey feather stood up. And now, don't get me wrong, Luna is a cool big sis, but I don't think she was as cool as you, Lori. And as for that why blank is the worst sister ever, Lincoln stared at the ground. That was the heat of the moment when you sit on my gaming goggles and did not apologize until after you got a new pair. And even then, your still apology didn't sound like you mean it. He returned his gaze back to Lori. I still remember how often you'd be there for me when I was still in diapers, all the way till I started first grade. So what happened? Carol asked out of the blue. Around middle school, I was starting to get more involved in social groups and got a few gal pals to hang out with, Lori stated. Which I don't mind at first, but I kinda do miss hanging out with you until I got into my stuff. Even Matt Clyde did that same year. So I guess it worked out, but I could never forget about the fun times we had. Now these days you seem more preoccupied with your phone than anything else. An annoyed look formed. Not only that, we're allowed to call you anyways, because our messages would be useless. The boy quoted it with his fingers. And on top of that, you became a huge control freak at times, but at least I can understand why. Lincoln then shuffled in his backpack on his shoulders, feeling one of the straps falling off. I know you're on the same boat as the rest of our family, but I gotta ask this. As many times you've threatened to turn me into a human pretzel, would you have actually done it? The eldest loud shook her head. I wouldn't have. The only reason I said stuff like that is I knew it would get you to listen. You mean like how you threatened Lynn threatened me with a baseball bat so she could drag me into her game? Lori put her hand on her mouth in defense. First off, bro, I would never threaten you with an object like that. Lincoln gave out that he clearly wasn't buying it. Oh, so you didn't think threatening to smash me with that nightstand after Bobby broke up with you because I insulted Ronnie Ann? Lori paused for a moment. Okay, I did, but there was more of the situation than you think. The white-haired boy folded his arms. Like what? We were going to keep this a secret, but I might as well tell you. Me and Roberto didn't break up, but Ronnie Ann was upset at you that had insulted her like that. The Hispanic girl that went wide-eyed as being mentioned before while she sunk her head into her hoodie. So we decided to help you guys try to make it up by staging up a double date. We figured by pretending to be over each other, you'd try to patch things up with Ronnie Ann. And now I think of it, I think that idea was kind of dumb. I mean, I couldn't even think of another good reason for the breakup. Lincoln gave a confused look. But you were crying and eating ice cream when I got home. That's because I was watching a soap opera, and I had to skip forward to the really sad parts because you were going to be home soon. Lori leaned against the lamppost. I thought you wanted to patch things up for my sakes, which might have been pushing it a bit. But when you refused, I had to think of something to quick get you saying yes by grabbing the nightstand, and wasn't my best idea. And I'm sure if Mom and Dad saw that, they'd ground me until I left for college. But it did get you to come with me. The blonde then gave a low sigh. Pretending not to be together was literally torture. Bobby actually threatened to dump me when you insulted his sister again. The teen smiled, but seeing you kiss Ronnie Ann, and that day made it worth it. The two 11-year-olds gave a small blush at the memory. Lincoln had to give his oldest sister the credit. Despite the fact that two teens couldn't have thought of something better, it was a smart play or reverse psychology. Lori walked up to Lincoln and knelt down to his level. Lincoln, I know I haven't been the best sister in the world. I've probably been the worst, and I'm really sorry for everything that I've done to you in the past. I said some of the things that I shouldn't have been said at your expense, and I didn't care enough about your feelings. But don't think for a second I never stopped loving you, nor think that you've had anything to me. Back when I found that letter you wrote about me, you remember I was mad at you, right? Lincoln nodded. I was angry for a few minutes. Lori then looked up at the sky, spawning contrails of large plane. You didn't see me for a whole while after that. I was sulking in my bedroom. I couldn't believe that out of 10 sisters you have, I was ranked as your worst. Lenny knew about it, but she forgot about it within a couple minutes. However, I realized crying about it wouldn't do me any good, so I wanted to prove to you that I was one of your best sisters. That's what motivated me to get the job at Gus's Games and Grub after you told me they were hiring. She then looked back at her brother. Then when you started using me for so many favors, landing me in hot water with my boss, I was generally heartbroken for 2 reasons. Aside from the fact that I couldn't attend prom with Bobby, you didn't seem appreciative for what I did to you, and I thought that maybe trying to change your mind was pointless. But then, the teen gave a more smile. You proved me wrong at the end and allowed me to have one of the best nights of my whole life, and I couldn't have asked for someone better in the world for a better brother. Lincoln watched as Lori's happiness turned that into sorrow. But that time and time again, I would forget how much you did for me and my sisters. Sometimes we take advantage of your generosity, make fun of you for your not so friendly way, disrespected your privacy, make it feel like us versus you. Lori then put her lips together. But worst of all, we treated you like you were some kind of bad hoax. I don't even care you purposely broke my golf clubs. I just want you to come back home. It's just not the same without you. Guilt had filled Lincoln in the way that was similar of how he talked with his mother the previous night. His thoughts returned home, and he grew to a lust to trust his family again, especially since they were making it clear of how much they regret making him the part of the family. Yet there were still a few issues left at the house before he could call it home again. For the last few days, I tried coming up with something that I could show you just how much you mean to me as a brother. I've been lacking ideas, or at least had to help the girls with their ideas. Lori then folded her arms. I'm actually a little jealous of them. Lincoln raised an eyebrow. Is it because you weren't as creative? Well, sort of, no. But it's mainly because it's always been my duty as the oldest to look after all of you. Mom and Dad couldn't be here to help them since they had real jobs and need to think of their own ideas for you. Sure, Mom helped Lenny pick out a mattress for your new bed, but, Lori stated, counting off her fingers, I've helped Lola with her dance as she was practicing for a pageant. Luann and Luna needed some video editing help. Lucy's been coming to me for rhymes. Lenny constantly needed remembering where she put her tools. The blonde gave a sigh. I could have not helped them, but I've already failed you because I didn't want you to feel the same to them. You'll understand when you're older, but it's hard being the third patient in the house all the time. The boy then nodded in agreement. I kind of do already. I've always wanted to help my other sisters with real stuff they do, even when I don't feel like it. Lucy wants a poem advice. Lola wants a pageant help. Luann and Luna was always ready to test her stuff on me. And Lana just needs help with her pets. Lisa always wants a test subject. Lori nodded. They do, but you realize that you have an older brother for 8 years, Lincoln. You've always had to help someone look after you the day you were born. The baby of the family for 2.5 years, even me? I was even the baby for 9 months until before Lenny was born. Since then, I've always had a younger sibling to be responsible for the day in and out, and that number kept growing, all the way up to 10 for 17 years. I have to look after 10 kids, and if Mom and Dad didn't have another baby, I think I'm gonna go crazy. Lori then looked up as she rubbed the top of her head. For every few weeks, I've always checked to see if I was getting any gray hairs. Lincoln smirked a little. If you started getting any gray hairs back then, your hair would be white as mine. Everyone laughed a bit at the joke. Lincoln gave a small huff. Aside from that letter I wrote, I truly would never say you're the worst sister ever. I have, Lori, but you have your problems. I can't deny that. The boy furrowed his brows. But at least you don't use me as a training dummy or ego boost. And you at least know you realize something is your fault. Plus, you're at least trying. Lori shifted her gaze and looked at the ground. It wouldn't surprise her that Lincoln still had a good amount of resentment towards Lynn. But between Lynn nearly destroying herself and Lincoln's attitude, it was clear that her brother was completely unaware of what was going on at home. Link, I know you still hate Lynn, but you don't know what she's been going through herself. You still remember when she ran into you coming home a few days ago? Lincoln then stayed silent for a moment before answering. She just asked me on how I was doing before taking off in a hurry. I was actually surprised that she had crutches with her. You broke her Achilles tendon when you broke into her foot, bro. She can hardly walk without some support. Not only that, but because the day you ran away from home, she literally hasn't been herself like that at all. Lynn's been acting like a second Lucy for an entire week. Not only that, she wouldn't even sleep or eat because she's been so depressed, thinking about how she caused everything to happen and how you'll never forgive her. It got to the point where the rest of us were taking care of herself. You may not believe it coming from me, but that's what it's been going on with us lately. On the contrary to Lori's expectation, Lincoln was quite surprised, shocked even. Indeed, he wasn't sure if this was the real truth or a fabricated story. But it did explain why Lynn appeared disheveled and shaken up after their unexpected encounter. Judging by this uneasy posture, Lori could tell Lincoln didn't even know what to do with this information. She lay a gentle smile on his shoulder. Lincoln, this might be a bit of a too big of a favor to ask you, but could you at least find in your heart to try and forgive and talk to Lynn? We've gotten her to actually eat something today, and I don't want to see her going through another relapse, or worse. The white-haired boy looked at his sister in the eyes before glancing at the ground. Biting his lip and thought, there were two issues within his task, and a substantial grade difference between them. Lincoln didn't see Lynn that much during school, not counting what happened on Tuesday. He was for sure as heck he didn't seem straying off from her hair throughout the entire week. And the other problem? Lincoln knew that he was still a bit hesitant to even not speak to the sports fanatic. After everything Lynn had did to him, this whole dilemma past events, Lincoln was practically certain that he'd clean Lynn's clock if they ever saw each other again, and yet it seemed like empty now, with how he just let her walk away without an injury. The boy still saw Lucy on occasion, but he felt a little sick to his stomach as he recalled the last meeting. Guess being with my other sister has, as Lisa may say, opened my eyes to see how dumb I was being. Lincoln thought to himself with a small nod. I'll try, if she doesn't want to try that away, that is. Carol then glanced at this sometime on her phone, giving a shrill scream that took Ronnie out by surprise. Lori, we gotta get to the mall before all the good clothes are sold out. Oh, shoot! Lori quickly brought her brother to a hug. Before sprinting to the passenger door, Carol slid over the hood to get on the driver's side. See you around, Lincoln! The tires of the car squealed as the sudden slam of the accelerator. As it took off, Renolda rejoined Lincoln's side, rubbing her sore ear. What do you think they're going to the mall for? Lincoln smiled a little. Lori showing that she's serious about this. Carol had a firm grip on the wheel as she drove through the neighborhood, rather unsafe speed. So, do you think he forgave you? Lori lay back in the seat. No, she looked at the rearview mirror as the other two kids faded in the background. But it's a start.